happened since last night? Okay, right? Last night's update, then they killed it. You may remember we talked about a few spots that we were watching in Europe, up near North Japan. We were also talking about movement that was happening down here south of Japan. And in the United States, of course, we were talking about movement and South America. So, what are the spots that were struck since last night? Well, you can see this is color-coded. So, yesterday's earthquakes are in a pinkish color, and today's earthquakes are in white. Well, the spot north of Japan, Kuril Islands, was struck by a 5, now downgraded to a 4.9. All right, and we'll get the coordinates on this. Yeah, definitely in the Kuril Islands itself, listed by the USGS and the Europeans. Then a cluster of earthquakes started to fan up north of the deep earthquake and the 5.9. This is going up into the Philippines at this point. So the Philippines, and we don't normally see much large earthquake activity in the Philippines. It seems to always strike to the south in Indonesia. But at this point, we're seeing earthquakes creep up. All right, and when I talk about creep up, creep to the north, and it's happening also to the north. So the spot we were talking about, north of Hokkaido, south of Kamchatka, that got struck, and we're seeing earthquake creep up to the north towards Taiwan. And we go back one day, you'll see all the 5s that struck kind of stand out as the 5.3 in the spot that we warned over to the east, but to the west, that spot hasn't compensated yet. This means greater pressure is building north of Taiwan, south of Japan. And when I say greater pressure, we have to add the 5s, the 4s, and the 4s to the north together. This takes us up into mid-range 5 at this point. Possibly 5.6, 5.7. Because we have a 5.3, 2 more 5s to the west, several 4s, a deep 4, and 4s to the north. And you add up all the 4s, 10 4s equals 1 5. And then we get a 5.3 and a 5. Again, that takes us up into the mid-5, upper 5 range. Now, also, last day, I want you to pay attention to what's going on down here. New Zealand going north into the West Pacific near Papua New Guinea. We have 2 deep earthquakes raised high off the globe. They're fairly obvious. And then down here in between these 2 points, total silence over the last 2 days. Now, we would expect to see movement strike in this region regardless in the 4 to 5 range. Normally 4s spreading out across the area. That would be a sign that pressure's being released. Instead, we have 2 deep 4s on either side, and this is a deep 4.9. So we might as well just call that a deep 5. This means there could be a shallow 6 to a shallow 7 in the nearby silent zone directly in the middle at the fulcrum point. Well, like I said, 1 magnitude up goes from 5 to 6. 2 magnitudes up goes from 6 to 7. So a 4.9 deep below can cause up to a shallow 6.9 to 7.0. I know. So, middle point there, we have to watch. Now, you would hope it would be a swarm of 5s. 10 5s, 15 5s, equaling a 6.5. But the chances of that are pretty slim at this point, I would say. That it's going to be a shallower, single, larger earthquake in the middle of the silent zone there. Now, down to the south, New Zealand sure taking its time to show the movement down to the south. It's been 2.5 to 3 days. Now, we've been watching the zone to the south of the main island of New Zealand. The 7.2 striking several days ago. Swarms of 4s and 5s spreading over to the east, but nothing to the south. Well, this means pressure's building to the south at this point. I was originally just looking for a 6 to develop down here to the south of New Zealand. We may have to take that up by a half magnitude at this point. It's been 2 to 3 days. No movement? None? Really? Are they just not reporting earthquakes? I doubt that, which means that there really is a silence that's experienced down here to the south. Normally, there's a few earthquakes that strike down here over the course of a week. So all that movement to the north, nothing to the south at the bend. And you can see the bend here going up to New Zealand. It comes down and makes like a J shape. And right down here, south of the island, the middle point between the tip of the J down to the south and the south tip of the island. And we would watch for a larger release to occur down here to the south over the next few days. Now, over in South America, check it out. Over the last day, multiple earthquakes spreading across the Pacific with a 5.1 out here at the South Pacific Rise. And again, this is near Easter Island, the 5.1 out here in the middle. But then look, follow the fault zone over to the east, the fracture zone, and where does it go? It goes right to our cluster of 4s. And they're getting semi-deep, letting us know that the pressure is hitting here and it's hitting like a wall. So, in other words, the pressure, when it hits South America, has nowhere to go. It's going up against a wall. It either tries to go underneath it or around it. Well, right now it's trying to go underneath over the last day, and since it can't go underneath with the deeper earthquakes, it is now fanning out with shallower earthquakes down the coast. Combine that together with the 7.2 pressing to begin with from New Zealand over here to the east, and it means the south part of Chile is now under tremendous stress. We still haven't seen the compensation movement off that 7. Like I said, sometimes it takes 1 day, sometimes it takes 3 days. Well, here we are on day 3, day 4, with no compensation movement off that. It's going to occur, it's just a matter of how long is this going to take? Is it going to take the full week? I mean, if it does, it does, but we're watching every day, and the spot to the south is the spot to watch. Now, United States, first of all, a 4.0, in case you didn't catch it last night, USGS finally reported an earthquake up here near Yellowstone, but it wasn't the earthquake we were expecting. Yesterday, a 3.8 earthquake struck in Wyoming, south of Yellowstone, at the fracking operations. Then, last night, USGS reports a 4.0 northwest of Yellowstone up in Montana. Now, that 4.0 is associated with the magma chamber at Yellowstone. They deliberately missed the near 4 down at the fracking operations just south earlier in the day. So, you don't see it here. But it occurred, it really did happen. So what does that mean? Well, we have the expected movement up to the northwest, the 4s. And last night, a 3.1 struck at the nuclear operations where they've done all the underground nuke tests. Now, it's not a nuke, it happened many kilometers below the surface, but it's just a man-made fracture point where all those tests actually fractured the crust slightly. It's a weak spot. Now, we told everybody last night we have to watch Southern California for possible 4.0 activity to develop. And since last night, from the 5.6 location down to the south, we started to see 2.8 strike up and down the coast. Near 3s. Well, there's silence down to the south now. Take a look at it. Nothing above 2.0 striking to the south over the past day? Since the 5.6? Really? I don't, again, guys, either they're not reporting earthquakes, which is a possibility in the U.S. due to politics, but let's look at the smaller earthquakes, the ones that nobody ever takes a look at. All right, and we're going to turn down the rings. This is the last 24 hours. Now, I was on last night at 10 p.m., so let's get half of these off here. Let's look for the last 12 hours. Okay, now we talked about 2.8 striking up and down the coast. You can see the 2.8 up to the north. Then you'll see equidistantly spaced going down the coast. You see this? The 3 earthquakes here along the coast? Well, they're almost equidistant apart, reaching right down into North Los Angeles. And we talked about this last night, that we would see new movement develop out here near LA, and it should go higher. Well, there's a swarm still down at Salton Sea. It's just 0s and 1s, but it's carrying on as normal. When I say as normal, I mean there is a magma chamber down there that's being pushed up and will eventually cause a volcanic eruption in Southern California if it doesn't stop, if you want to call that normal. However, I would say, it is normal, natural, I should say, but normal, we don't see it happen all the time. That's what's going on in Southern California, magma chamber rising. But the pressure is transferring down the coast. Now, I want you to look over to the eastern part of California at the Nevada border. You see the 1.8 up here, the 1.5 here, and the 1.4 here. Now, look at the earthquakes to the west. We have the 1.8 up here, 1.7 down here, central, and a 1.8 to the south. So they're almost equidistantly spaced on both sides of California, not just down the coast. So we have 3 down the coast, and we have 3 along the border. If you were to back this out and connect the dots down here to the south, if you were to draw a line between the earthquakes down the coast and the earthquakes at California's border with Nevada, they come down to a point. Where does the point take us? It takes us down into Los Angeles. So, again, the signs are there. The pressure is coming down. It's pointing towards LA. And we're watching for a near 4 to strike. Possibly above 4 in the LA area. Most likely near the pumping operations, but it could also strike one of the volcanoes just across over the mountain range to the east. So again, we have a few volcanoes over here to the east. They're not going to erupt. We're just talking about those will be the spots where the earthquake pressure releases, the seismic pressure comes out. Additionally, as if that wasn't all enough, we also have to watch over to the east. When we look at the last 24 hours of earthquakes, the 4s out west on the western portion of the craton, the swarms in the Midwest from the 5.6, which caused damage to multiple people's houses, infrastructure was damaged, people were injured, and we issued a warning. For that to occur, we said, watch out. Similar size earthquake to the 5.6 was going to strike in the Midwest, and it'll be in the next 2 days, most likely in Oklahoma. And then Oklahoma got hit by the 5.6. So a 5.6 off the West Coast, followed by a 5.6 in Oklahoma. I don't know how much more proof we need on pressure transfer going from the West Coast to the East Coast. But people on the East Coast need to be aware now when we look at these earthquakes and you've already seen 2 5s. Look at this. This is the last 7 days of 4.0 and greater earthquakes. Now, do you see anything here in the States? First of all, we have 5.6s on either side and we have 4.0s on either side, right? I mean, again, you can see it's almost like the whole western portion of the plate has been displaced on the same magnitude level from north to south to east to west, going as far east as Oklahoma. Well, what does this mean for the rest of the country? Pressure is starting on the west coast and pushing to the east, which means there's building pressure right now to the east of the 5.6. Well, who's to the east of the 5.6? New Madrid seismic zone in my neighborhood, going up into Illinois, where the fracking operations are at the Indiana-Illinois border, going south into near central Alabama, Tuscaloosa, where the fracking operations are, across northwest Georgia, where Pigeon Mountain Volcano is, and then going up the eastern edge of the craton, all the way up to New Brunswick, Canada. And right through these states, we have a tremendous amount of pressure currently underway. It hasn't released yet. No smaller earthquakes? Are they deliberately not reporting earthquakes on the East Coast? We've seen that before. But this means new booms and rumbles are going to appear in the Northeast. It also means new earthquake activity. And like I said, there's been 4s out west, starting with the 5.6, spreading out to 4s, recombining to 5.6, and then guess what's going to happen over on the East Coast? In the east-northeast, we should see a similar sized earthquake to what's striking out here on the western portion of the craton, in the 4 range. Okay, so the last 7 days shows us our activity in the U.S. is far above where we normally would be. And it's proof of pressure transfer across the plate, defying what all the modern day geology says, what the professionals came to my page to deny. And it's not just there, guys. Take a look at the Central America. See all the 4s? 10 4s equals 1 5. Okay? So, we clearly have 10 4s, a little bit over 10 4s, going in the mid-range 4. All right, now let's turn it down to 3s. Now look what struck over to the east after all of those 4s. See this huge stack of earthquakes, 2s and 3s? That followed the movement here out to the west, off the western coast of Central America. And the pressure transfers across the Cayman Trench south of Cuba. So all these 4s pressed over to the east and caused all these 3s and 2s, with a couple 4s mixed in. Ultimately, These 2s, 3s, and 4s here at Puerto Rico will press out to the east and cause another 5-ish range earthquake at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in the next day. So this is the last 3 days of earthquakes right here, and you will see that the stack of earthquakes in Puerto Rico will total up to 1 earthquake or 2 striking on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge out to the east. Pressure always transfers to the east, whether it's in the U.S., Central America, or South America. And as I've shown you before, South America, the pressure goes, like I said, like a wall, goes down around the wall and releases down here to the south, where the Pacific plate actually meets South Atlantic. Over in Europe, really quick, let's just quickly look what happened in Europe. Now, you may remember last night we were talking about the activity developing out, and it looked like it was going to start to fan out from the Italy portion and go out across the European plate. And we talked about Spain, we talked about France, and we talked about Poland. Well, look what happened since last night. Just as expected. Thank God, Italy is starting to allow for pressure transfer to occur back across Europe, which means the swarms are going to die out in Italy itself, and the pressure will fan out and start to do what it should do, which is go all the way over to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So you can see Spain was struck at the France border, France was struck at the Swiss border, and Poland was struck at the Czech border. Okay, so that all being said, pressure transfer occurring, but look down to the east-southeast across Turkey. Now this last night, you may remember, I was talking about how western Turkey had moved and there was a silent zone that had developed in Turkey, and we needed to watch central Turkey for a 4 to strike, right? Well, now a 3.9 is struck. That's close enough for me. It's in the exact spot where we warned, and it's a 4. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, there's 3s and now a 4. Well, if we add the 4s, the 3s, and the 2s together, that takes us back up to the 4 level, and it should strike to the west-northwest of this location where the 4 is now. Well, west-northwest, where does that take us? Well, if we go due west, that takes us over to our swarm spot in Italy, but it appears Italy's now allowing for pressure transfer to occur, which means we're going to have to watch actually to the east, and this goes over into Romania and also into Serbia, north of Bosnia. Okay, we've got a silent zone developing out over in Eastern Europe. And I would lean a venture of a guess that it's going to be struck right along the edge of their craton, which bends. You can kind of see it bending here in yellow. Okay, between the yellow and the green. And it bends around and goes back up through South Poland, okay? So, watch to the east of the swarm zone in Italy. Thank God it's starting to die out. But this now means Europe, you're going to see the fanning out of pressure. English Channel, we're talking about Northern Europe, South Poland, going across Belgium and Netherlands. We're going to have to watch for new pressure transfer to occur. And once the 4 strikes over in South Poland, then you're looking at more pressure coming towards England and going out towards the English Channel. And again, that gets smaller as it goes across Europe. Just like in the U.S., pressure transfers across the plate and fans out, loses momentum. Same thing across Europe. Take a look at it. Here, take a look at the last 7 days of earthquakes. All right, so we have all our deep earthquakes, then our shallower, larger earthquakes. These are color-coded, dark red being the oldest. So we have our series of deep earthquakes that kick this all off at the start of this week. Then shallow, larger movement spreading out in all directions. And when it spreads out in all directions, it goes from the West Pacific across Asia. Connect the dots. We have one silent zone down in here still. Last 7 days, no movement in Iran at all. Look at all the movement to the east. Look at all the movement to the west. This area in the between must be under tremendous stress. This is a new watch and warning right now. Let's just go ahead and issue it. Okay? When we look at the last 7 days of earthquakes, you would normally expect to see a 4 or a 5 in Iran. We're looking into South Iran. So when we look here, okay, we get right down in here, right along the southern tip of Iran. And we've got, 10 4s and a 5.8 over to the east. and God knows how many over to the west. So we're talking about a fairly large earthquake here. Let's actually try to calculate it. 10 fours to the east equals 1.5. We have at least 10 fours over to the west that happened over the last couple days. Let's say the last 3 days or 4 days, like what we're looking at here. So that takes us up into the 5.2, 5.3 range. And as we know, 5s in this region can cause damage and injuries. So, I don't know how we would get a warning out, or if we'd even want to the people in Iran. We do want to get it out. I'm being sarcastic there. So let the people know we're watching for a 5.2-ish earthquake to strike in between these two spots. Has not moved yet. And when we look at the rest of the planet, again, like I was saying, the pressure transfers out across the plates, and in the U.S., it's so obvious, and which way it progresses. All right, and this is last week's 7 on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which was a result of last week's 6.8 over in Myanmar and the 6 in Italy. So you got to understand, a 6.8 struck in Myanmar, then a 6 in Italy. First the 6 in Italy, then the 6.8 in Myanmar, then the 7.1 out here on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This is a volcano, by the way, called the Romanche volcano. The Romanche fracture zone, where the Romanche volcano is. And apparently it's erupted in the past 200 years. It's 18,000 feet below sea, and it's put off smoke plumes, floating pumice, turbulent waters, and 18,000 foot depth. So that's just amazing, that, right? Okay. Looks like another 3.9 just struck here. Hold on. Or is that the same one? They just updated it. Okay, never mind. Okay, so that's your update, right? You now know areas to watch. And the silent zones are spots which are hit next. So the update in the U.S., look, Southern California, you're primed and ready. We told you to watch for the next 2 to 3 days. This is day number 1.5. So you got another day and a half to watch. Then the East Coast, again, we're looking at that 2 to 3 day watch time, and we're looking at it over the next couple days or less. So have a plan, be prepared just in case. And I would like to point out the earthquake was felt, this 5.6 in the Midwest, was felt as far north as Nebraska. So up here, whoops. Let's turn these down. Okay, so this state here felt as far north as Nebraska, as far south as central Texas, as far west as as far east as St. Louis, and as far west as central Colorado. So that's a fairly large earthquake, and it caused serious damage in the Pawnee County, which is a Indian tribal nation, and they have now put out an emergency moratorium on the nearby frac wells several miles out from the earthquake epicenter. Like I told you guys, super fractures occur once an earthquake this size strikes. Once a large earthquake strikes a large fracking operation with thousands of wells, it cracks the other casements of other nearby wells, releasing gas, releasing water under high pressure down into the shallow layers of bedrock. This then causes shallower large earthquakes in the 4 range going up to 5 range. That then causes other wells to break and release their content, causing other earthquakes. And in a nasty domino effect, you'll get a super fracture where thousands of earthquakes then develop off of one single larger earthquake that shook it all up to begin with. And it won't stop until the pressure off the West Coast stops. And as we saw in Oklahoma over the past few years, it took a couple years for that pressure to actually fan out and quit. We had to experience a few silent events and them to go draw down well pressure to stop the previous super fracture. Well, now it just happened again. So if you live in Oklahoma, I hate to tell you, but you just got back on a very, very long roller coaster again. And you're locked in, and you pulled out of the station, and it's rolling. So the chance to get off the roller coaster was back when they were denying the roller coaster existed. So, too late. And they hire, again, the people in the state of Oklahoma, your political professionals, again, your politicians, have passed laws that prevent you, the citizen, from preventing fracking. Do you know that? Oklahoma and Texas, that your state governments pass laws that prohibit local people from prohibiting frack wells, that only the state can come in. And so if they build one next to a playground, for instance, which they do, and you don't like that, well, guess what? You can't do anything about it now. They made it illegal for you to say anything or for you to do anything. So if you're in a town and they put a frack well next to your local park, and you go into the town and you guys have a vote and you talk to City Hall and you get the mayor and everybody and the whole town's involved and you say, we don't want that there. They have made it illegal for you to do anything. They passed a law in Oklahoma and Texas to prevent locals from preventing frack wells. And so you've got yourself a huge problem now, again, because you decided, not you people listening, but the overall people in the states of Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas, you decided it would be a great idea to make yourselves the new New Madrid seismic zone, the man-made seismic zone. You decided it'd be a great idea to rob the pressure from the Midwest, where I live at the New Madrid in Missouri, and you thought it'd be a great idea to drill the heck out of the center of the plate here, and all the pressure coming from the West Coast, when it comes across, it used to hit where we live here in Missouri, at the natural bend in the edge of the Craton, which you can see here at the Mississippi River Valley, and that bend used to catch the pressure and naturally release in large earthquakes. Well, guess what? You stepped in between you states there, and you drilled and drilled and drilled thousands of points along the edge of the plate. And now, when the pressure's coming across the rigid edge of the plate, instead of going over to the Midwest, you've stepped in the middle. You've become a gatekeeper, and you gatekeep that pressure right there. And it builds at your man-made operations it's too late. You fractured Humpty Dumpty. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put the fracking operations back together again. So you now own the New Madrid seismic zone, which means that I want to thank you. Here in the Midwest, we want to, and this is not a sarcastic thank you, this is actually a regretful one, that I want to thank you, as detrimental as it is to your neighborhoods and your towns there, and you took the pressure from us here in the Midwest. Now we only get small swarms after you guys get creamed. The reason we used to get creamed is because this has always happened this way, and geologists just got it wrong. They didn't understand that pressure transfers from the west to the east. They were always under the impression that the mid-Atlantic ridge was spreading and pushing the United States to the west. We've tried correcting them on that, and they're just they put their fingers in their ears and call you names. So, anyways, just understand, that is why you're getting hit now, because your officials ignored the warnings, decided they knew better, and passed laws against any dissent, and now they get to own what they did, which is to drill the heck out of the center of the plate, and there's no filling it in with concrete. There is no filling it in with steel bars and closing down every well. It's done. They made the choice. Now they got it. And because you made the choice and your officials made the choice, there is no turning back. Now you're going to have to accept the fact that you are the New Madrid, and it will be that way for many thousands of years to come. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but when you had a chance to do something about it, the people in your states who you elected and hired and are still paying decided that they weren't going to listen to reason, and they were going to deny facts and do smear campaigns and try and fight it, as opposed to just acknowledge that it was obviously happening. And as you know, when you ignore a huge problem in your life, like just think about a huge problem in your life or your business, are you a business owner? Think about a big problem that develops at your business. If you ignore it, does it go away? No. And think about bills or problems in your life. If you ignore them, Do they go away? No, they grow. Any problem that's big that you ignore and pretend doesn't exist grows. And that's what's happened here, unfortunately. And now there's people injured. And it's going to happen again. It's not done. All it takes is a new series of earthquakes off the West Coast. And for that to happen on the West Coast, all it takes is a few deep earthquakes, causing shallow earthquakes over here in the West Pacific. So, West Pacific earthquakes, deep earthquakes, and shallow earthquakes that result off those in the West Pacific cause West Coast U.S. earthquakes, which then cause fracking operation earthquakes at the central portion of the craton at the New Madrid in Oklahoma. Maybe that's what we should start calling it. The New Madrid. The NNM. The NNM seismic zone. The New Madrid. And it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. And I wish there was some way to fix it, but there isn't. You've now fractured the F out of the side of the plate, and because you did that, there is no turning back. Which means that larger earthquakes, okay, let me give you another example. As if this isn't enough. A 5.6 off the coast, followed by a 5.6 at the fracking operations. Now, I want you to imagine what would happen if this was a 7.0 off the coast. Do you think it's possible to get a 7.0 off the coast of California? Yeah. Well, what does that mean when if a 7 strikes off the coast here at the Gordo Escarpment? Would that be followed by a near 7 at the fracking operations in the Midwest? Well, it certainly is possible. And in the past, when we saw upper 5s, 6s strike off the coast of California, we saw mid 5s strike in Oklahoma back in 2011 when this all started. 2010, 2011, when it really began in earnest. You got to go back after the Japan earthquake. After the Japan 9.0 over here, the whole Pacific plate adjusted with multiple 6s and 7s. A 7.7 struck up here in Vancouver Island, British Columbia in 2012. 6s, multiple 6s and a 7 struck Northwest California. You guys remember this? Napa Valley, you remember? Well, after that, we saw a large movement again, starting to grow in the Midwest. So if you see this now, you see a 5.6 off the coast and a 5.6 in the Midwest, geologists are just, you guys noticed, nobody saying anything? Where's Professor John Vidale now? Is he going to say this is another coincidence? Oh, that's just a coincidence. Earthquakes don't progress across regions. The West Coast doesn't cause earthquakes in the Midwest. That's what they said. Now look at it. The chances are astronomically high for it to be a 5.6 and a 5.6 west to east within a day of each other. All right? So, much love. I've really digressed, but I love talking this stuff. You guys know I love talking, and this is why I do what I do. And the fundraiser again, one more time, let me thank everybody who's given. I wouldn't be able to sit here all day and do this without you guys giving because they've cut me off. Look, if I was making money on my YouTube channel, I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't have to do this to raise money for myself. But because they keep deleting, I lost 1.4 million views in a day. Not just views, the actual videos in the live stream. And then last night, they flagged down my my short Dutch synths intro that Animatronic made for me. I had it on my YouTube channel. You guys know it's only 30 seconds long. I play it before the intro every night. It's like dun 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 dun, dun, right? It looks like a VHS tape. All right, I had that on my YouTube channel, and now the video is gone, not deleted. And if I deleted it, it'd say this video has been removed by the user. No, it says video unavailable, and it's not set to private, and it's not set to unlisted. If it was set to private, it would say this video is set to private, and if it was unlisted, you could still, when you open it up, it will watch. But it's just gone. And it had something like 90,000 views, and everybody was telling me it was like one of the coolest intros they've seen. I just put it up a month ago, and it's now gone. I wrote YouTube, took a screenshot of the missing video, wrote them, and they haven't written me back yet. It's just gone. And if that video's gone, how many others are gone? And I didn't delete it. So what does that mean? Well, 100,000 views on a video is $100 at least. And I'm not just talking money. I'm talking about people liking it. So all the likes, all the shares, all the everything goes away too. And if you have it on your Facebook wall, all of a sudden you got a link that doesn't work that all your friends say, hey, this doesn't work. It's censorship. So the fundraiser, every time the censorship starts, the fundraiser gets pushed, and we will keep pushing it. And you guys don't even have to. I will keep pushing it if they keep censoring me, all right? And I don't think they like that. As a matter of fact, I know they don't because they pitched such a fit last night with the trolls. As soon as the fundraiser went up, man, I'm fighting off comments on all my videos. On my videos, not on the live stream. They're leaving the live stream alone because you guys are in there. They're coming over to the videos and saying, don't donate, da-da-da-da-da. And this is not even on I'm not even asking for donations in my old videos. So why would there be comments left today on all my videos saying don't give? Gee, does that sound like a certain group of people that has a problem with me? You know what I mean? So, all right, guys, it's been a fun adventure of seismic forecasting, geophysics. Like I said, I am the most controversial and censored geophysics nerd on the internet. I love it. I love it. It's the old punk rock in me that kicks in. Other people might be ashamed to be shamed by scientists, but you know what? I take their shame as a badge of glory. I'll put it on and wear it because their disdain is like singing to my ears. If the world loved me and the scientists praised me and, they were all trying to get in on it, then there would be something wrong. We're overturning everything that they've pushed for the last several years. Everything from climate change to HAARP to weather modification and now to geophysics, seismic forecasting. I just stumble into these things, I got a way. Dutch Sense has a way. I am Dutch Sense, but Dutch Sense has a way of really finding his way into, like a bull in a china shop. I just come through and, oh boy,